Okay, maybe we'll get everybody here. I'll go in here in just a second. Hope everybody's doing all right tonight. Let me get my microphone situated here. Tonight we'll begin, we've got a couple of presentations tonight as we start looking at the chapters in the DeFore and the Acre books. And we'll start first of all with an introduction to PLCs tonight with Adrian. And then I'll take the second topic, which is building the foundation with mission, vision, values, and goals. And that's what we'll be doing tonight. And so let me just check again. Adrian, can you hear us? Are you there? Adrian, can you hear us?
Hello?
Adrian, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. So
okay.
I've got your PowerPoint ready, and let me see here. Hang on just a second. You're ready to, if you're ready to go, hang on. Adrian, are you at your computer?
Yes.
Okay, we can do it one of two ways. You can pull up your PowerPoint there, and I can give you host duties, and you can control it, run the PowerPoint and everything from your end, or I can run it for you, whatever you would prefer. Works both ways.
Let me, can you run it for me?
I can do that. Not
okay.
Not a problem. Hang on a second. Let me make sure I get it situated here. Hang on. And as I'm finding in my 706 class, it takes just a minute for these to load so you can see it. So hang on just a second. Can everybody see now? Introduction to Professional Learning Communities, PLCs. Is that up on your screen now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Adrian, we'll let you go ahead and walk us through your presentation.
Okay. So I'll be talking about the Introduction to Professional Learning Communities, or PLCs as we know it. Okay. You can move forward. So what is a professional learning community? Well, a PLC is characterized by the collaborative work of educators to continuously seek, share, and act on their learning in order to improve their practice for the purpose of improved student outcomes. So it's basically what we do every single day, purpose of looking for increased student learning. I'm ready for the next slide. So getting started, just looking at the developing a conceptual framework for it, and I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of these points, but it's about a shared mission, vision, values, and goals, a collective inquiry into best practice and current reality. So we're talking about having open conversations about what happens in your classroom, what happens in your school. Collaborative teams focused on learning, and you go back to the no I in team, so we're looking at collaborative teams. Action orientation and experimentation. What are you going to do? What's the experiment? What action are you doing? We're going to talk about continuous improvement and results orientation. So the next slide we'll talk about, we're gonna talk about the aforementioned things in the next few slides, and these are characteristics of professional learning communities. So the shared mission, vision, and values, that's the main key role when it comes to developing a framework for a PLC. What is your mission? So why do you exist? What is your vision? What do you hope to become? The values, what commitment must you make to create the school or the district will improve our ability to fulfill our purpose, and then looking at your goals. What goals will we use to monitor our progress? So when you're looking at developing the framework for a PLC, you have to have these things in mind. You have to have that mission, vision, values, and goals. And our author, he actually likened it. You can move to the next slide, Dr. Boyles. He likened it to an actual table. When you look at the table, the school as the table, and the four legs is what holds the school together. So you put that mission, vision, and the values in the concept of a school as a PLC, as a professional learning community, all with common goals, all with a common vision, mission, and values, holding together that school as a PLC. The next slide talks about collective inquiry. So what is collective inquiry? Well, Ross, Smith, and Roberts refer to collective inquiry as the process of a team learning wheel, and they identify it in 4 steps in that process. So the first one is public reflection. That is when members of the team talk about their assumptions, their beliefs, and they challenge each other. But this isn't one of those challenges that's it's one of those unique challenges where you're trying to push one another to be better. Shared meaning, the team arrives at a common ground and shared insights. Joint planning is when the team designs action steps and initiatives to test their shared insights. And then looking at the coordinated action, the team carries out the action plan. This action need not be joint action, but can be carried out independently by the members of the team. So with these things in mind, when you're looking at the team learning wheel and you're looking at collective inquiry, this basically enables team members to develop new skills and capabilities which will move you to those new experiences and different awarenesses. So being able to be aware of your, as administrators, we're always, we need to be aware of the needs of our building and be aware of the needs of our students, so to speak. So with the collective inquiry, it allows you to do just that. The next one, we talk about collaborative teams. And with collaborative teams, we share that common purpose. And that goes back to number 1, having that shared vision and that mission, those goals. Organizational growth. It's one thing to just grow individually, but when you can collectively grow as an organization, it really moves you forward in that process of being aware of what's going on. Being focused on the learning, and not necessarily the learning of the students, but the learning of the teachers in that collaborative group, in that professional learning community. We're focused on our learning about, what it is that we're teaching and how our students learn, and then taking that back to our classrooms and being able to use it there. So not the focus on learning in terms of students, but the focus on learning in terms of that collaborative team. And then, of course, a willingness to get together. And I know I talked about earlier when we were looking at the different videos and how Finland teachers, we were all thinking it was so great how they were so open. The classrooms were so open for people to come in and to sit and to get ideas and share ideas, and that feedback was there. And, you were able to see mastery teaching at its finest. And that's what we have to be as a collaborative team. We have to, when you're working in a PLC, and that's the thing about PLCs, it has to be a willingness to work together. And it can't be, these are the things that I do in my classroom that works with my students. Because if it works with your students, then that's something that should be shared with the team so that we can move everyone forward. And we can go to the next slide. So what will collaborative teams do? What will you do once you're in these teams of a PLC, of a professional learning community? What is the purpose of this PLC? What is it that you need to do? Well, once you're in these teams, you need to set norms of the time that you're going to spend, how to encourage listening. When there are discussions that are going on, how decisions will be made. How will you make those particular decisions? These are all things that you need in a PLC, in an effective PLC, so that it does not become a gripe session. You need to set these things in place ahead of time. So how will we handle confidentiality? You know, what goes on in our PLC will stay in our PLC, or do we share these things with other PLCs? And if it's an effective one, then you'll really look at that confidentiality piece. Establish specific goals, and those goals, we all know what SMART goals are. You know, making sure that they're specific and that they're measurable. So establishing what those specific measurable goals are. Also, the team will analyze the data. What data are we analyzing? It may be EVOS data. It may be data from common assessments that you've done. And it may be, you know, used to we would have Blue Diamond, but we've sort of done away with Blue Diamond now. So, you know, looking at different quarter data and that sort of thing. Also, in these collaborative teams, you're going to determine what your gap areas are. You know, well, what did our students miss? Are we going to compare this to other classes in the school? Are we going to compare this to other schools in the district? What have you? Also, in here, you're going to share best practices. What worked best for your students and how you were able to, you know, to articulate that lesson today to the point where they were able to understand it and really check. And when you did a check for understanding, that you were able to see that they did well. Well, sharing those best practices with other teachers, and then also creating common assessments and that sort of thing. Those are sort of the things that you would do in a collaborative team or in that PLC. The next one we talk about, next point is action orientation and experimentation. You know, creating an action plan with that data that you've received from common assessments, with the data that you see from EVOS. What are you going to do with that data? It's one thing to look at it. It's one thing to disaggregate that data, but then what are you going to do with it once you have it? So creating that action plan and actually experimenting. Our authors talk about in this phase, you know, in the action orientation and experimentation, you know, no one's afraid to actually, you know, commit to these experiments, because when you look at it, it really is at the end of the day about the increased student learning and about student learning. So being able to have that forward thinking to say, okay, I'm going to experiment this and see if it works. Not being afraid to fail. And even when you look at it, it's not necessarily a failure. It's okay, what can I do to move forward? I'm going to place you guys on hold for just 1 second. My family is coming in, so I need to close my door. Just 1 second.
No problem.
Sorry. They'll come in and barge in on us. So the next thing, developing and testing those hypotheses. So once you have that action plan and once you're looking at that experiment, testing, you know, just like when you encourage students to do a science experiment, what are you expecting to get from this? You know, what are your hypotheses? What are your thought processes on this? And again, you go back to that, viewing the failed experiments as opportunities to learn and begin again, and to basically learn from what it is that you've done and how can you fix those things moving forward.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Also, during this phase, you're clarifying what is expected to learn, monitoring that learning in a timely basis. Again, you go back to those SMART goals. Creating systems to ensure students receive additional time and support if they are not learning or if they need an additional challenge. So really experimenting with that action plan that you've put in place, so that you can get some good results and some good data and use that PLC as that time to analyze that data and work that plan and rework how things are going to be doing moving forward. Align all resources to support student learning. That's sort of a given. If we're not, it's got to support the learning. Otherwise, why are we doing it? And then the next thing, examine all of the practices, the policies, and procedures of the school in light of their impact on student learning. So again, reviewing that information and knowing what to do once you've received it and how to move forward with it. The next piece is the continuous improvement, and that's basically what education is about, continuous improvement. Viewing what it is that you have, and constantly looking for ways to improve the teaching and the learning of both teachers and for students. And with education, that's something that has to be done. We can't go in with the same with this idea of students and how they learn and that sort of thing, and not doing that looking at professional growth and professional development in order to create these ways to improve the teaching and learning of students. What is our fundamental purpose? What do we hope to achieve? And what are our strategies for becoming better? And then once you get that information, what criteria is needed to assess the efforts towards the improvement? How do you know that things are being improved? And then we have the results orientation. Again, and that's basically looking at the results. You've looked at the data in your PLC, you've examined that data, and you've created an action plan, you've experimented with it. So now what does the results tell us? And then this is a time when we are able to reflect on what it is that we know and what the data has been allowed to tell us, and then where do we go from there? How do we rework the plan? Do we begin again? Do we revise? Edit? What sort of things do we do after we have gone over that data? And so that's basically what a PLC is. It's basically what's the groundwork and the framework, and what sort of what are the blocks, the blocks, if you will, of building up to an effective PLC. And then the quote here, in PLCs, the focus is on learning rather than teaching. So, what is it that you're learning throughout this process so that it can form your teaching, so that translates over to students. Oh, well, I guess I forgot to put that there.
That's fine. Okay. Anything else?
No, I think that pretty much covers it as an introduction of what a PLC is and what it basically entails, and how the framework of the professional learning community.
Good job. You've given us a good overview. I would suspect, Adrian, that that a lot of the subsequent presentations that will take place over the next few weeks will tie back to this. They should.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully they will. Anybody have any questions or comments or thoughts on anything that Adrian said at this point? I have a couple just notes that I made as you were talking. I think some of the things you were talking about gaps in determining the direction that PLCs go and the work that you're doing in PLCs. It's really much like the needs assessment gaps that we talked about, and so I think it's the same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would be interested to hear from all you all that are on here right now. We've been doing PLCs for a long time. Where do you see your schools on PLCs right now? If we were to say a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being brand new with it and not being very effective, and 10 being, the PLC of the year, national PLC of the year, where all do you see your schools with PLCs? Just curious.
I see us as probably a 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We've been doing this for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was presented to schools or district wide, and kind of left to each school to just do.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have moved to lot of the high schools. We did this our second year where we have a period of time daily to opt for PLC time and to do the targeted intervention. And so now we're focused this year with PLC coaches within the building that have been going to training and are part of a district leadership team, and they actually are strictly here to and it's teachers in our building help coach our individual PLCs. So we're hoping to see movement on that continuum.
And so there's a district-wide model for PLCs that you're implementing? Is it consistent school to school? Okay, that's good. All right, somebody else tell me about your school.
I would say we're probably at about a 4.
Okay.
We've been doing this now about the same amount of time as Jen's school, about 3 years. We received a new administrator. She came in and she really pushed for PLCs, and we have a set day every week that each grade level comes together, and we call it collaborative planning, but it's the same thing as a PLC, and it's very effective.
Okay.
I would say that my school, I would give us a 6 or 7. And again, just like most schools, we've set aside, we call it sacred time for PLCs. So teachers, they meet for 45 minutes daily, and during that time, there are no conferences scheduled, no parent conferences. There are no activities or what have you during that time that will pull teachers away from that. And we make sure that they're using it for that time that it's set aside for. And teachers have been doing an awesome job of just from going around looking and checking, inspecting what we expect. Teachers are really on it when it comes to the PLCs. The name is different. It's not PLC anymore. It's a learning team meeting. So we've gone from PLC to LTM, but again, the very same premise and that sort of thing. So I would give our school a 6 or a 7.
Okay, good. Somebody else? Anybody else that can share with us?
Dr. Boyd, I didn't catch the question. Could you repeat the question again? I heard everyone's response, though.
I was asking on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being novice and 10 being PLC of the National PLC of the Year. Where do you see your school with PLCs?
Oh, okay. I would probably say a 6. And we refer to them as collaborative teams.
Right.
We have some teams that have really grasped the concept and taken it to heart, whereas others, I wouldn't say they're struggling, but I would say they're not as consistent, especially in the collaborative side of things, whereas like our English team, they've created workbooks, surrounding the English to PLC and things of that nature, and just have built a model for other collaborative teams. So I think we're, with new leadership, we're still in a rebuilding phase, and we're working towards it. Of course, the district sets aside various dates and times and things of that nature for training and meetings, but we're getting there. It's something that we constantly have to drive home yearly.
Okay, good. Anybody else? Okay, well, good sharing there. The rest of you tell me, and again, we'll move to talk about mission, vision, goals, and values in just a minute, but what is the most significant thing that you feel like you've seen happen as a result of PLCs in your schools? Maybe something that you never thought would happen, something that's significant in your mind.
Something that stands out to me is the teachers beginning to take ownership and build their own capacity, and they're just much more confident, becoming more confident, and that's the most confident ones are helping spread to the least confident ones.
Okay, good. Somebody else?
I would agree with that. I think there's a sense of ownership and accountability when it comes to the collaborative teaming. And that's something that I didn't think that I would see, but I think that it's something that is definitely moving throughout the building a lot more. The collaborative teams taking responsibility for their outcomes as well as the student outcomes, and especially when it comes to student achievement.
Okay, good. Anybody else?
What I've seen is the experienced teachers, they are more open to coaching since they're getting used to that coaching and getting used to others kind of, giving them feedback on things they're doing. And I see they're more open than what I've seen before.
That's good. That's good. And a couple more questions. We've spent a good bit of the time thus far, as in the first part of this class, really looking at what reforms are, what change is, what constitutes change and reform, and then looking at it in the context of other countries. And now we're kind of coming home. We're going to spend the next 4 or 5 weeks looking at this as an example of a reform initiative, of a reform idea that we're implementing in really across our country. And even though it is down the road away, several of you said 5, 6, 7 years maybe that you've been doing PLCs, and to the point that, Darren, we're calling them teams and other things. It's still in the development stage. It's in the implementation stage, and maybe for some time. As you look at the other countries, some seem to be better at PLCs than we are, in the context of one of the things that we've talked about several times in the last few weeks is the notion that some of these countries have a high level of trust. There's a great deal of collaborative work about how to get things done, how to improve instruction, really a lot of work. A lot of it inductive in terms of mentoring and that kind of thing, but still that kind of work. There is certainly team collaboration in the sense that you've got some master teachers working with some maybe more novice teachers. So with all that said, some countries are better at PLCs than the United States. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think that it could possibly be the fact that education is just valued differently in other countries as opposed to how they're valued here at home. And I feel like that's sort of a trickle down effect, in how we're valued as educators, and that sort of, being valued and having that perception of education and holding it at a high regard, that really drives anything, honestly. So I feel like, that attitude and how and how they hold the educators in such a high regard in different countries definitely speaks volumes.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Good points. Anybody?
I think that the grammar of schooling that we talked about last week has been such a long-standing institution, and the norms that have been set, it's been, it's a battle to fight those.
So you think that grammar hurts us instead of helps us? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that what you're saying?
Well, I think it's a hurdle to overcome.
I think you're right. A couple of things Adrian said that I want to just emphasize, and then we'll move on. And I'm going to tell you one funny story, Adrian, too. You said focus on learning rather than on teaching. I think that's really the point of this whole conversation we'll have about PLCs over the next 5 or 6 weeks is that the focus is really on learning rather than on the teaching part. And then you did say that it's not joint action, but coordinated action. And I think that's true. I think, that's a hallmark of what we're doing with PLCs, in that we don't expect everybody to be doing the same thing. We don't expect everybody to be doing the same thing at the same time, but there has to be some coordination. I think that's a little step away from some of the things we've had. Some of you that are a little older will know this. There have been times in the work that we've done as educators, what we've done in schools, where everybody had to be doing the same thing. And as we tried to implement a reform, we tried to emphasize that everybody had to do the same lesson plan, the same day, the same training, all of that kind of thing. And I think that's one thing differently about PLCs, as I reflect on it here at the end of my public school career, is that I did see individualization. I did see a lot more focusing on the needs of that group of people from a standpoint of improving their assistance to children to help them learn, as opposed to just standardized training. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's been a real hallmark of this as a reform initiative. I think it's been good. I do want to share one funny story, and we'll move on. Adrian, you're apologizing for your family coming in.
Yeah.
One of our professors was teaching a couple of weeks ago and said, one of the people was presenting and said, "Wait a minute," and jumped up, and they had their camera on, like none of y'all do in this class, by the way, but had their camera on and ran across the room, and there was all kind of flailing going on and everything. And the person came back to the screen to do their presentation and was kind of out of breath. In just a moment, the husband ran across the back of the screen without a shirt on, and lo and behold, the person who was doing the presenting was in their basement, and a snake had gotten in. And
Oh
so
my
it
goodness.
disrupted class there for a few minutes. So at least you didn't have a snake getting in. That was so we're good to go there. Okay.
It's just fit me.
Okay, let's move on. We're going to now, let's see, we're going to talk about your system reform plan areas, but I'm going to do that later. I want to go ahead and get into talking about mission, vision, values, and goals, and we'll come back and do that. I thought we might do it now, but we'll come back. I want to talk about that because none of you signed up for this, and I'm glad you didn't, because in all honesty, talking about mission, vision, values, and goals is something that I've had a lot of experience with. I've had a lot of experience with it at the school level, at the district level, and at outside school work. And while it's not necessarily, when we're doing strategic initiatives and strategic planning, it's not necessarily exactly the same thing. There's a lot that is similar, and a lot of things that are similar. And so we're going to go down this path here for a few minutes. I want to, let me see if I can get my PowerPoint up. Hang on just a second. And this PowerPoint I've kind of put together from some of the things that I've done. We've had some other students that have had some good ideas on the foundation of PLCs, and so I've brought in a few of their things as well. And so I want to share this with you. We'll start, and I'm going to do, let's see. Let me just go ahead from the beginning. Can you see my foundations of PLCs PowerPoint? I guess not. Hang on just a second.
Not yet.
Okay, hang on. It takes just a minute. See if I can get it to share. Here we go. Now, that's the thing we're having to learn about Zoom, is there's a little bit of a lag in time. You got a blue screen yet?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, hang on just a second. I'm going to go back before I stop that. Let me just, while I'm here, I'm going to turn me off so you don't have to look at me, and so you can focus on the PowerPoint. Hang on. Now. And I'll jump around here just a bit as we go out in just a minute and look at a couple of videos during this PowerPoint presentation. So you got foundation of PLCs there. One of the things that I hope all of you will touch on as we go forward in the next few weeks is that the mission, vision, values, and goals is really I think is a starting point when you're dealing with PLCs. Adrian, you kind of alluded to that some in your conversation there. I guess the pillars, as I think DeFore calls them, the pillars, the foundational building blocks, I think I've called them in this PowerPoint coming up. And we're going to hear in just a minute from DeFore about some of his thoughts about really the mission, vision, values, and goals, and the context setting for this. But it's one of those things. If we're not careful, if we don't know, if we don't have a common understanding of where we're going, given that what you just said, not joint action but coordinated action, if we're not coordinating where we think our mission is and where we think our vision is, then it's likely that we will arrive at different points. And I think that's the point DeFore makes. I think he can say it better than I can. And so let me just go ahead and go there right now. Hang on a second. And I'm going to show these outside the PowerPoint because that seems to work a little bit better, I found over the last couple of weeks. So hang on just a second. Let me hang on just a second. Now, hold on. Do you see Mr. DeFore's picture up there now? Can you see it yet?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I have to unplug we found I have to unplug my microphone and headset, so I have to do that first. So hang on just a second. So let's watch this. Hang on. Can you hear that?
Not yet.
Hang on. Just a second. Hang on just a second. Give me a little more volume here. This is the kind of the clunky part of this. Hang on. See if we can do it again. Okay. Just a second. Yeah. Let me start again here. Hang on. Now, let's see if we can do it here. Can you see him now? Can you see Mr. DeFore now?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. I think we're good.
I think the answer is relatively simple. There's never been greater consensus about what it's going to require of educators in order to improve student learning in all their schools. All of the leading educational researchers in North America and all of our organizations we agree that our best hope for improving schools is to focus on developing the capacity of people within the schools. There's just been an international study done by the McKinsey Group by Sir Michael Barlow that looked at the highest performing school systems in all of the world. And they said that the one thing was an understanding that a system can only be as good as the people within it. And so in those high performing systems, there was develop the capacity of those people to understand that the only way we're going to improve schools is by improving the quality of the instruction that students receive every single day through the collective efforts of their teachers and school leaders. So those who would ask the question, why PL6 high else is out there, and as such, it's universal. Biggest obstacles that are interfering with schools moving from traditional schools to professional learning community aren't really a lack of resources or some of the other external factors that we might point to. The biggest obstacle is overcoming our own traditions and the mythology that mythology that says we will improve schools by hiring heroic individual teachers who close their door and make a difference in the lives of their students and are sort of indifferent to what else is going on around school. Mythology that says the real purpose of schooling is merely to give students the opportunity to learn rather to ensure that they learn. So there are some long-standing traditions in American education that we must confront and we must overcome them if we are going to succeed in becoming professional learning communities and making a difference in the lives of our students. There are now over 150 different schools on the All Things PLC website, and every one of them represents a tremendous success story. It's hard to identify a single story that stands out. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably go with the school district in Sanger, California, which is one of the first districts in California to go into program improvement and come under state sanctions. Led by the superintendent, Mark Johnson, who was recently named the National Superintendent of the Year by AASA. The district began to implement the PLC process district-wide. They adopted a mantra of no blaming the kids. What can we as educators do in order to create the conditions that will help our students learn at higher levels? There were certain things that were expected to happen on all of the schools. Teachers were expected to collaborate and develop a guaranteed curriculum to monitor student learning through common assessments, to have plans of intervention when students were struggling, and to have all of the educators throughout the system help one another learn in order to be more effective in whatever their respective responsibilities were, whether it was teaching or leading a building or leading the district. The results have been nothing short of phenomenal. It's one of the highest achieving districts in California in terms of the progress that is made over the last 4 or 5 years. And Michael Fullen, who's looked at effective school systems all around the world, picked Sanger as one of 4 school systems in the world that he wanted to highlight in a video of successful district-wide implementation of school improvement. So there are many, many stories that warm our hearts and keep us inspired and motivated to continue doing our work. But Sanger is one that's particularly touching. They have over 80% poverty, 80% minority, and yet every year student achievement is improving in that district and every school in the district. It's a wonderful story.
Okay, hang on. Let me get back to PowerPoint. Okay, can you see the PowerPoint now? Hang on. Hang on. All right, are you back to the PowerPoint now? Can you see that?
Yes.
Good. That's a little bit dated, talking about Mark being the National Superintendent of the Year. That's couple years ago, but I think it's valuable to hear DeFore talk a little bit about that. Now, one of the things he says there is that it's back to, I think, a point you made, Jan, about overcoming traditions. That's where we are with a lot of this. It's making progress by overcoming some of those traditions, some of that grammar that we have. I find it interesting too that he says that he calls out kind of sort of those what he calls heroic teachers who only benefit their students. I think that's been a detriment. We've had a culture at times where coming out of this high stakes accountability movement, where teachers didn't want to collaborate. Teachers didn't want to coordinate their actions and activities with others. And so we've had to struggle to overcome that cultural feeling within our schools. Part of that, I think, is grounded when we are able to do that, is grounded in being able to do these things that he talks about in terms of the 4 foundational building blocks: the mission, vision, values, and goals. And let's talk about each of those. The mission is really the purpose. Why do we as a school district, or any entity for that matter, why does it exist? What's the purpose for our existence? I think sometimes people get these first 2 mixed up and confused a bit, but it's why do we exist? The second is, what do we hope to become? I think sometimes people will have maybe a tagline as their vision for a school or a school system, and I'm not going to I'm not going to unpack all of that stuff that DeFore talks about in the textbook. You all certainly can read that where he talks about mission and vision and the things. But I think it's, the point is, what do we hope to become? And then the third building block is the values. How must we behave in order to make our shared vision a reality? What are our operational values that are guiding what we do? And what are those things that guide our behavior? And then finally, what steps will we take first and second and third and so on, and why will we do that, and what is the logic for doing them in that way? And so really that's the important kind of skeletal part of a PLC. If you don't have one of those things, mission, vision, values, or goals, and it's not coordinated and fully operational in your school, it's going to be hard for PLCs to develop. And so, that's kind of what we're talking about, is the foundation of a PLC are these things. These are the pieces on which the rest of it will be built. Let's pause for a minute and say, how many of you, if I were to ask you right now, and don't you all go start looking it up on the internet, but how many of you could state your school's or your district's mission, could say it? How many could do that? Anybody that can quote your district's mission or vision, or your school's mission or vision? Mission, rather, excuse me.
I can state my school and not my district.
Well, tell us your schools.
We empower individuals to become caring, competent, responsible citizens who value education as a lifelong process.
Good job. Anybody else? Nobody else? I'll tell y'all this, at one point, we had developed a new mission in Mooresville when I was superintendent there. And well, actually I did this in Cleveland County too. We gave principals a test on the mission. I said, you're going to have to write it at the next principals meeting. I did give them a warning and let them know that they were going to have to do it. But, it's one of those things that I expected them to know and to internalize. They had helped develop it. And let me ask you this. Did any of you feel uncomfortable as you read what DeFore writes in his book, DeFore and Aker write in the book about missions, school missions, and some of the critique that they make of school missions? Did any of you feel a little uncomfortable about your school mission? Be honest.
I do.
Okay.
Because it's been the same mission statement since I've been here as an assistant principal. And and the more we talk about the grammar and the traditions, it's starting to bother me.
Mm-hmm.
But our missions, it states that educating leaders for tomorrow through a tradition of excellence.
Okay.
And that, I think that's misleading with what we're trying to do now in all schools. I think it's missing a focus on learning.
Okay. Good point. Anybody else? Kevin, are you with us?
Hello?
Are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Tell us about your mission statement. You're the most non-traditional organization that we have in this lab.
Actually, we just had a staff meeting today. The school has never had a school leadership team, never had a school improvement plan or a school improvement team. So I'm having to implement all of that. And
Wow.
we have co-captains for the team, and I have empowered them to get with the rest of the group. And right now they're developing the mission, vision, values, and goals for the school. We do have some of those pieces, but it's so lengthy, and it was from kind of put together by the former administrator without the input of the team.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just words. It means absolutely nothing to the staff.
Okay.
So to allow them to have the input so that it really builds the culture of the school. That's where we're at right now.
So this is timely for you then. That's good.
Very timely.
Good. That's a good. You'd answered kind of my next question. In your school, do you know how your mission was formulated? All of you know how your mission was formulated? Jan, you said yours was there before you became assistant principal. Does anybody have an idea how yours was formulated in your school?
Well, I'm assuming it was the product of the school improvement team. That was in those first couple of years I was here, was a very unengaged group of people, teachers. So.
All right.
Yeah, our mission was in place before I came on board, but I'm positive that it was formulated within the school improvement team process and that it was put to a vote with the remainder of the staff.
Well, let me ask you this. Should a school mission be put to a vote? Why do I ask that question, and what do you think about that? Anybody?
Well, but because it's developed by teachers to start with, if it's done correctly, it's their product already.
Okay. Do you think what happens if you do a mission and it's voted down? What does that tell you?
Everybody's not on the same page.
Yeah, it does. And I guess my point, and none of y'all hopefully are doing that. I think if you are building consensus in your development of the mission statement, then the vote is going to be kind of anticlimactic or maybe even not necessary. If you've got that culture where everybody feels contributing, that they're contributing to the process, somehow you've got to create that within this PLC environment so that people feel ownership of it, because I think that's the point that DeFore and others are making. We're going to hear from Simon Sinek here in just a minute about it. If people are not buying in, then there's a problem there. So, I do think, glad to hear that some of you are know where it came from and are seemingly a bit troubled by the fact that some of them are ancient and old. So let me go on. I don't want to get bogged down here too long because I know our time will get away from us. So, the mission, the purpose, why do we exist? Starting with the why, about why your school district, think about the why. And we're going to hear an interesting take on the why here in just a minute from Simon Sinek. Do we focus on the what or how, or do we focus more on the why? And so I want him to explain again. I apologize for the clunkiness kind of going in and out here, but I think it's worth the time. This is a TED Talk, so it's about 15 or 17 minutes long, so it's a little bit longer than the other one, but I do think you need to hear it. Any of you familiar with Simon Sinek? Have you read any of his books? One of his favorites of mine is Leaders Eat Last, and it's about leadership characteristics and military leaders in particular and how they always took care of their men and made sure they were eating first. And so it's a really kind of a neat book. But hang on just a second. Let me see if I can get this going here. Hold on. If I can. Just a second. And I'm going to plug again here. Hold on. Hope that's not killing your ears when I do that. Do you see Mr. Sinnek's face up there on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so here we go.
How to explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access, the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight? The Wright brothers beat them to it. There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery. And this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operated it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done. That's how most sales is done. And that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do. We say how we're different or how we're better. And we expect some sort of behavior or purchase of something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat screen TVs. They're evidently qualified to make flat screen TVs. They've been making some flat screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products. And nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. Here's the best part. None of what I'm telling you is my opinion. It's all grounded in the tenets of biology, not psychology, biology. If you look at a cross-section of the human brain looking from the top down, what you see is the human brain is actually broken into three major components that correlate perfectly with the golden circle. Our newest brain, our Homo sapien brain, our neocortex, corresponds with the what level. The neocortex is responsible for all of our rational and analytical thought and language. The middle two sections make up our limbic brains, and our limbic brains are responsible for all of our feelings, like trust and loyalty. It's also responsible for all human behavior, all decision-making, and it has no capacity for language. In other words, when we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. You know, sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and figures, and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why do we use that verb? It doesn't feel right. Because the part of the brain that controls decision-making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart, or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision-making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal and want to be a part of what it is that you do? Again, the goal is not just to sell people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. The goal is not just to hire people who need a job. It's to hire people who believe what you believe. I always say that, you know, there's if you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they work for you with blood and sweat and tears. And nowhere else is there a better example of this than with the Wright brothers. Most people don't know about Samuel Pierpont Langley. And back in the early 20th century, the pursuit of powered man flight was like the .com of the day. Everybody was trying it. And Samuel Pierpont Langley had what we assume to be the recipe for success. I mean, even now, you ask people, why did your product or why did your company fail? And people always give you the same permutation of the same three things. Undercapitalized, the wrong people, bad market conditions. It's always the same three things. So let's explore that. Samuel Pierpont Langley was given $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. He held a seat at Harvard and worked at the Smithsonian and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best minds money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him around everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley. Then how come we've never heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley? A few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They had none of what we consider to be the recipe for success. They had no money. They paid for their dream with the proceeds from their bicycle shop. Not a single person on the Wright brothers team had a college education, not even Orville or Wilbur. And the New York Times followed them around nowhere. The difference was Orville and Wilbur were driven by a cause, by a purpose, by a belief. They believed that if they could figure out this flying machine, they'd change the course of the world. Samuel Pierpont Langley was different. He wanted to be rich and he wanted to be famous. He was in pursuit of the result. He was in pursuit of the riches. And lo and behold, look what happened. The people who believed in the Wright brothers' dream worked with them with blood and sweat and tears. The others just worked for the paycheck. And they tell stories of how every time the Wright brothers went out, they would have to take 5 sets of parts because that's how many times they would crash before they came in for supper. And eventually, on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took flight. And no one was there to even experience it. We found out about it a few days later. And further proof that Langley was motivated by the wrong thing, the day the Wright brothers took flight, he quit. He could have said, that's an amazing discovery, guys, and I will improve upon your technology. But he didn't. He wasn't first. He didn't get rich. He didn't get famous. So he quit. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe. Well, why is it important to attract those who believe what you believe? Something called the law of diffusion of innovation. And if you don't know the law, you definitely know the terminology. The first 2.5% of our population are our innovators. The next 13.5% of our population are our early adopters. The next 34% are your early majority, your late majority, and your laggards. The only reason these people buy touch-tone phones is because you can't buy rotary phones anymore. We all sit at various places at various times on the scale, but what the law of diffusion of innovation tells us is that if you want mass market success or mass market acceptance of an idea, you cannot have it until you achieve this tipping point between 15 and 18% market penetration, and then the system tips. And I love asking businesses, what's your conversion on new business? And they love to say, oh, it's about 10% proudly. Well, you can trip over 10% of the customers. We all have about 10% who just get it. That's how we describe them, right? That's like that gut feeling, oh, they just get it. The problem is how do you find the ones that just get it before you're doing business with them versus the ones who don't get it. So it's this here, this little gap that you have to close, as Jeffrey Moore calls it, crossing the chasm. Because you see, the early majority will not try something until someone else has tried it first. And these guys, the innovators and the early adopters, they're comfortable making those gut decisions. They're more comfortable making those intuitive decisions that are driven by what they believe about the world and not just what product is available. These are the people who stood online for 6 hours to buy an iPhone when they first came out, when you could have just walked into the store the next week and bought one off the shelf. These are the people who spent $40,000 on flat screen TVs when they first came out, even though the technology was substandard. And by the way, they didn't do it because the technology was so great. They did it for themselves. It's because they wanted to be first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. In fact, people will do the things that prove what they believe. The reason that person bought the iPhone in the first 6 hours, or stood in line for 6 hours, was because what they believed about the world and how they wanted everybody to see them. They were first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So let me give you a famous example, a famous failure and a famous success of the law of diffusion of innovation. First, the famous failure. It's a commercial example. As we said before a second ago, the recipe for success is money and the right people and the right marketing conditions, right? You should have success then. Look at TiVo. From the time TiVo came out about 8 or 9 years ago to this current day, they are the single highest quality product on the market. Hands down, there is no dispute. They were extremely well funded. Market conditions were fantastic. I mean, we use TiVo as a verb. I TiVo stuff on my piece of junk time Warner DVR all the time. But TiVo's a commercial failure. They've never made money. And when they went IPO, their stock was at about $30 or $40 and then plummeted, and it's never traded above 10. In fact, I don't think it's even traded above 6, except for a couple of little spikes. Because you see, when TiVo launched their product, they told us all what they had. They said, we have a product that pauses live TV, skips commercials, rewinds live TV, and memorizes your viewing habits without you even asking. And the cynical majority said, we don't believe you. We don't need it. We don't like it. You're scaring us. What if they had said, if you're the kind of person who likes to have total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you. It pauses live TV, skips commercials, memorizes your viewing habits, etc., etc. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, and what you do simply serves as the proof of what you believe. Now let me give you a successful example of the law of diffusion of innovation. In the summer of 1963, 250,000 people showed up on the Mall in Washington to hear Dr. King speak. They sent out no invitations, and there was no website to check the date. How do you do that? Well, Dr. King wasn't the only man in America who was a great orator. He wasn't the only man in America who suffered in a pre-civil rights America. In fact, some of his ideas were bad, but he had a gift. He didn't go around telling people what needed to change in America. He went around and told people what he believed. I believe, I believe, I believe, he told people. And people who believed what he believed took his cause and they made it their own, and they told people. And some of those people created structures to get the word out to even more people. And lo and behold, 250,000 people showed up on the right day, on the right time to hear him speak. How many of them showed up for him? 0. They showed up for themselves. It's what they believed about America that got them to travel on a bus for 8 hours to stand in the sun in Washington in the middle of August. It's what they believed, and it wasn't about black versus white. 25% of the audience was white. Dr. King believed that there are 2 types of laws in this world, those that are made by a higher authority and those that are made by man. And not until all the laws that are made by man are consistent with the laws that are made by the higher authority will we live in a just world. It just so happens that the civil rights movement was the perfect thing to help him bring his cause to life. We followed not for him, but for ourselves. And by the way, he gave the I have a dream speech, not the I have a plan speech. Listen to politicians now with their comprehensive 12-point plans and not inspiring anybody. Because there are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or authority, but those who lead inspire us. Whether they're individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead, not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead, not for them, but for ourselves. And it's those who start with why that have the ability to inspire those around them or find others who inspire them. Thank you very much.
Okay. You get back here. So what do you think about what he had to say? What did you hear him say? As it relates to us in schools?
Well, as a leader, we strive to have our employees, so to speak, buy into our vision and our mission. So we need them to buy into it before they're going to get on board. So that's very important, the way he related it to business.
Right. Good point. Someone else?
I think what I found very interesting was how he talked about people buy, that whole idea of buying things because, you don't really buy for the product, but you buy because of
What did you say is the tipping point to get people to really buy into the why?
right.
Where is that? What percentage is that?
And I think that's part of when it comes to education. That's part of the reason. That's part of it too. We typically buy into what it is because it's the latest.
Anybody there? Can you hear?
I hear you.
Okay. You say 15 to 17% to get that tipping point, and we know that from a normal distribution that he was talking about. He said what you do serves as proof of what you believe. What's the implication for us as we develop mission statements?
It needs to reflect what you believe or what the organization believes.
Are you there now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just having technical trouble here. What's the implication for us as mission statements? As we develop mission statements, what do you have to say?
The mission statement needs to reflect the strong belief of what the organization itself.
Mm-hmm. The why, the purpose, the cause, the belief. Why do you exist? The why is our mission, and that's what he's saying. He said, what you do serves as proof of what you believe. How many do you think our schools, do you think some of our schools' proof is inconsistent with their mission statement? The way we sometimes treat children. Sometimes we're a school for the adults and not for the children, and so that's his point. So let's move on real quickly. As we develop a mission statement, and this is kind of some from what DeFore has to say. He said, principals and teachers must go beyond the cliches and examining their current beliefs or assumptions about the mission of education. They can't be consistent with half-hearted affirmation of their belief that all students can learn. Instead, they must challenge themselves to answer the tougher questions that address the very heart of the purpose of schooling. And those questions are, as he points out, if I can get it to work here, what is it we expect our students to learn, and how will we feel our collective responsibility to ensure that this learning takes place for all of our students? And that's a totally different proposition than what many of our mission statements do. Mission statements that don't answer their questions will contribute very little to the work we do in learning communities, whether learning teams or whatever we call them. We've got to have a mission statement that lives, that serves as proof of what we believe, as well as a guiding principle for us. So let's go on real quickly. Again, I don't want to belabor the point. You had a chance to read this text, but the vision, what do we hope to become? The vision, that compelling vision, is one that we have to have. And we said the vision, I think, as we look at it in the terms of the PLC context, is creating for us a picture of where we want to be. Too many times, I think our visions may be a tagline or simply saying something that maybe we already have in place or that we're close to. Vision needs to stretch us out there and look into the future, into what it is we want to become. DeFore said, those who hope to develop a school's capacity to function as a learning community cannot overlook the critical building block in achieving that goal. And I do think that's important. When I think back to Cleveland County as a school district, we had a mission statement that said we would partner with our community, or partnering with our community, we will equip our students for success in a rapidly changing world. That was what we had a passion about, but it drove our work. But our vision was to be one of the top 10 performing school districts in the state in every measure. And so, that vision is something out there that we're reaching for. That's what it needs to be in our schools. DeFore talks about the 5 scenarios for creating a vision. And he uses the term, I think, if I recall correctly, he uses the term boss. The first scenario is telling. The boss announces the vision to us. The second scenario is selling. The boss persuades the members of the school or the members of the organization as to what the vision should be. The third is testing. The boss reacts to a vision and gets us to react to a vision, gives us an idea, and then tries to get our reactions to that. The fourth is consulting. We have a committee that develops a subject to be approved by the boss or the leader. And then finally, 5 is co-creating. Vision is collaboratively created. Which of these do you think is the best? That's not a rhetorical question, but it's the obvious question. Beg your pardon?
The 5th, number 5, the
number
co-creating. Mm-hmm.
Is there ever a time that 1 through 4 is needed or appropriate? What do you think?
I mean, some of them are necessary, like the selling. Maybe for a new administrator coming into a school where there's no buy-in, or trying to turn a school around. A lot of selling has to happen before you can get to co-creating.
Mm-hmm. You're right. I think if you're in that point, though, you just have to go back to the mission. I think sometimes we tend to, when we're doing this work, and it's hard work, I think in my experience, and I've shared with you all before, I've done this work with statewide organizations. I've done this work with chambers of commerce and civic groups, and I've done it with community organizations, and I've done it with school systems and schools. And I think sometimes we rush through the mission, and that causes us to want to tend to take shortcuts on the vision. And unless we have that grounded why that Seneca is talking about, I think it's going to always be hard for us to create a vision and to coalesce around a vision that we want to see in our schools and in our district. So, one of the things that DeFore and Aker point out is that one of the things that we need to be sure we are when we work on vision and mission is informed. What does the research tell us about good schools and successful improvement initiatives? I don't think it's necessarily bad for us to look at other missions, to look at other visions. I certainly know it's not bad for us to look at student needs and trends, needs assessments, data gaps, all of those things. None of that is bad stuff for us to do. To the contrary, I think it's good stuff for us to do as we think about developing those missions and visions. But I do think it's probably something that is not done as much as it should be. Going back a few years, 1997, Larry Lizotte, who some of you may know, I've had a couple of occasions to hear presentations and read some of his work through the years. And he talks about effective schools and the effective schools literature. I would hope that all of you know that, but he has research on safe and orderly environment, climate of high expectations for success, instructional leadership, clear focused mission, opportunity to learn, and student time on task, frequent monitoring of student progress, and home-school relations. He believes these are the correlates, he calls them, of effective schools. That kind of research goes into a foundation for building our mission and vision. What do we believe about safe and orderly environment? Fenwick English is another person who's been out there, and he talks about the we believes. What do we believe about these things in the context of our school? And those guide the development of a vision that will operate from a research base. What does research tell us about what is good, what a good school looks like, and about successful reforms or initiatives to improve schools? And then, as the writers in our text point out, the synthesis of those indicators says that, the predispositions, collaborative work behavior, and professional productivity all come together in that as we create that vision. And so that's critical. Research on the characteristics of effective schools we have, and we talked a little bit about this as we talked about grammar before, the structural variables, those things that are part of the structural grammar of our schools. And then there's process variables, those things with which we can, that within the context of our schools, that we can change and that we can manipulate in some way, that we can reform and reshape. Those process variables are part of that research that we need to understand. The research on successful school restructuring, we focus upon an agreed vision of what students should learn. I think too many times that vision that we develop is not an agreed vision. And going back to what Seneca says, we're going to have, about 68% in the middle, usually if it's a normal distribution. And, research tells us that that's, on most any given topic, that's, what we're going to have there in the middle. We're going to have those early adopters. We're going to have people that are going to have, if we went back and looked at that list, and it's already been said, we're going to have to sell some of this, but we've got to agree upon what that vision is. And we've got to understand that we've got to develop those critical thinking skills. We've got to have a clear shared purpose for that. We've got to have, high standards and all those things that we know we've got to have. Effective vision statements, and these are DeFore's characteristics, not mine, certainly. Effective vision statements are imaginable. That's a little bit of what Seneca also talks about. He talks about, I think if you look at what he says in the context of the why, these characteristics really play into that. It's imaginable, it's desirable, it's feasible. What is it you want your school district to be? Is it feasible to want your school district to be one of the top 10 in every category? Is that focused? Is it flexible enough that you can do some things with it? Is it communicated? Can you share that with people? Certainly in an organization as big as a school, everybody is not going to have input in your vision, and everybody's not going to be on the team that develops that. But can you communicate what your vision is? And so effective vision statements will have these characteristics. From that, then we can begin to develop what our values are, or to maybe not develop, but express what our values are. What is it that we must do in order to make our shared vision a reality? And this is really where the work begins to happen, I think. Vision, mission, and vision set our mindset and set our direction and our purpose, as he says. But the values really begin to take us in a different place. They begin to foster those feelings, again, that Seneca talks about, They promote those levels of loyalty to the organization. They facilitate consensus about our goals that we'll talk about in just a minute. If we don't have consensus about those, then we can't hope to accomplish them. They encourage professional behavior. That's back to that piece that we talk about in such frustration at times when we have people that aren't on board, who are not part of the organization, who are pulling against us instead of pulling with us. And so, if we have those values that are shaped by mission and vision, then it will promote that professional behavior. And again, that is really promote strong norms about working hard and caring. That's what that professional behavior is about. And then it does reduce the tension and stress that has occurred. As we're implementing reforms and we're implementing change, then that's a stressful period of time. Shared values provide the direction that enables individuals to act autonomously. And I think that goes back to Adrian's point at the very early part of the class where she said not joint action, but coordinated action. Within the context of our vision and values and a mission that guides our organization, we've got to feel that we can operate safely so that the things that we do are going to be valued, but also we're not going to find ourselves in a defensive position. We can act independently of others because we understand what the direction of the organization, where it is intending to go. So, why are shared values important? I think these things certainly point that out. I think unless we get shared values, and sometimes people will call these core beliefs. Sometimes they call them different things in organizations. But how are they shared? Is an important aspect of that, and how we achieve them. That's important. But they do need to flow from a strong mission and vision. I won't elaborate on that more. I think some criteria for developing those statements, and DeFore give us some of those things. Keep the number few. And again, it could be as simple as we believe that this is what we're going to do. We believe that to become this that we want to become, then here's what we need to do. So we need to link them. We need to be direct. We don't need to be real wordsmithy with them. They need to be direct and point us in a direction. They need to focus on behavior, not beliefs. And I've said, we believe they need to focus on, here's what we will do. Here's what we will accomplish. We will do it in this kind of context. We will do it in this kind of environment. We will accomplish it this way. And then, as I've said many times in this slide here, as I've talked about it several times, on ourselves rather than others, we will. What is it that we will be accomplishing? And then, from the mission, then the vision, then the values, then comes our goals. Which steps will we take first and when? The common mistakes in those school improvement goals is that they're too many and that they're too general. The specific steps that we'll take and when we will take them. And so that goes back to, and again, Adrian already hit on this earlier. You heard me say it as we've talked about the needs assessment, but they need to be SMART goals. Are they specific? Are they measurable? Are they attainable? Are they realistic and timely? And then our goals, a school that's trying to change so that it can function as a PLC has to establish goals that are clearly linked to a vision. They must be limited in number. They must be focused on desired outcomes. They must be translated into clear, measurable performance standards. They must be monitored. They must be designed to produce short-term wins. And they must be understood and accepted as significant by all parties. And I end on that one because I think that one goes back, a thread goes back between mission, vision, values, and the goals. you can't have an understanding of goals and acceptance of goals if you don't have a common belief in the mission and vision and values. And so, as we talk more in the coming weeks in your presentations about the PLCs and the work that you're doing and the things that you're going to share with us in these presentations, I think this is an important context. The work that you're doing in your schools, and some of you have already stated that earlier as we talked about this. If your mission and vision and values is old and you're trying to do PLCs in that kind of environment, then you're going to run into some struggles. And so, and I understand that may be beyond some of your responsibilities. Some of you may not have the ability to change that or to do things differently with that right now. But as you are leaders, you need to think about going back to that mission, vision, values, and goals when you think about setting goals for your school. Don't try and do that outside the context of that, because it is clearly an important step. I do think. I've gone on probably too long about that tonight. Are there comments, questions, thoughts that you have about your schools and school systems as it relates to the mission, vision, values, and goals? Anybody? Questions? I do think DeFore and Aker do a good job of laying this out. My experience has been, and I'll share with you just briefly some of my experience in deploying some of these things in a larger context, in a district context, because that's really the purpose of the EDS, is to prepare you for that district leadership. How do you take a school district of 15 or 20,000 students and 2,000 or 3,000 staff members? How do you develop a mission and vision and values and goals? I think the bigger question is, how do you cascade that out into the schools? I think the biggest, the most important step in that is getting the right people involved in developing your mission statement at the district level. I would hope that in some of your schools, that your mission statements at the school level are at least somehow reflective of the mission statements that you have at the district level. How do you accomplish that? It's been my experience that I've used broad-based committees, used some kind of structure, such as the state board areas of goals, not their goals, but their state board areas of goals, and use those as a structure to deploy a large group of citizens, teachers, principals, administrators, students, community members, in developing some ideas about what your mission and vision is. You can do it in some small groups to generate some of the thinking about it, and then come together in a large group to develop and bless a mission and a vision. But then from there, you need to probably, and the values rather, but then the goals begin to be the piece that you develop outside the larger group. I think too many times we come in and we say, let's develop some goals, and then from there we're going to develop a mission and vision. I think you got to spend a lot of time with your mission and vision and get people's buy-in from it, for it at the very beginning. It's hard, and it's hard work. And I've done it in, say, for example, in Cleveland County, did it twice with a group of a couple hundred people and you can use technology to develop drafts and massage drafts and get buy-in, and not voting, but certainly coming together and having general meetings and having some table talk around the pieces of the mission and the concepts within the mission, and what is the important focus of the mission. Why are we here? And as Cynic would say, what is it we're here about? What's the point of us being here? And going from there. And so it is hard to do. I'll grant that. It's a little easier to do at the school level because you have a captive audience with control of those teachers. But again, the school, if it only develops a mission and vision that encompasses the thoughts and ideas of the staff, it'll be a very limited mission. And so you need to think about that, thinking outside the box. Certainly that mission and vision can guide your PLC work, but I think it does have to have the aspect of having parents and community involved at some point. DeFore, differs on some of those pieces that on some of that, but I think it's important to have that. I've talked a long time. Okay, Kevin, go ahead. You have something?
Yes, sir. I have a question. Would you say that mission and the vision, the values, would you say that kind of sets the tone for the culture that you're trying to establish? And it's important for you to set your culture before you actually begin to look at the goals that you want to accomplish. Well,
I would kind of take a different tack on it. I would say your culture is your culture. I think probably absent a mission that everyone can buy into, it's going to be hard to change that culture. So I think, your mission today won't be the same that it's going to be 5 years from now. And so your mission today is going to exist within the culture of your school. If you have a culture that is maybe not student-centered, you've got to do those things that would help bring people to the realization that that's not where you want to be. But the culture is the culture. And so, if you say, if your mission leads you to the vision that we're going to be, the best school in North Carolina in terms of our belief in student learning, and you're not there, then you're not going to accomplish that vision. Your vision might be to get you incrementally there. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think you certainly have to work on them in tandem, and that's been my experience. But I think your culture is your culture. You've got to develop a mission and a vision within that context, because you got who you got. Otherwise, then you come across as telling your mission and vision instead of and maybe or selling as opposed to co-creating. And we all know that sometimes the only way to change culture is to change people. We'll go back to what we learned about having the right people on the bus and all of that. I'll look back here somewhere in somewhere I've got. Yeah, here it is. Some of you all have that old Good to Great book that you've studied and probably read in the past. When we look at that and Jim Collins' work about getting the right people on the bus, that may be a precursor to getting your culture situated. So, good point. Any other comments or questions? Good, thank you. Well, let's talk just briefly, real quickly, about your system reform plans. I've been able to read what you've submitted about your system reform plans, and looks like the ones that I have, Jan, and I looked at it this morning. I haven't looked at it during the day. I apologize if some of you submitted today and I didn't have it. Jan, you're looking at grading practices, and it sounds like you've got a pretty good idea about that and plan. Any questions or issues with that?
Not yet.
Okay. All right. And Adrian, you're looking at performance-based testing. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. And how it affects Standard 6.
Okay. Any issues there?
None that I'm aware of. Not yet, no.
Okay. And Kevin, you're looking at teacher retention, correct?
Yes,
all right. Everything good there? Now, you were getting started last week when we talked.
Yes, sir. Still trying to get an intern supervisor.
Okay, I understand. And all right. And Sharon, you're looking at kindergarten early assessment.
Yes, sir.
Getting the data you need and getting your needs assessment developed there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Danielle, I don't think I had gotten yours. What are you focusing on? You know yet?
I don't know yet. I need to establish that. out of work,
Sure.
have determined what that's going to look like. So that's actually a conversation I need to have with you.
Okay. Well, if you want to give me a call, we can discuss that. And
Sure.
if we need to, that'd be fine. Everybody feeling good? At least those of you who have decided you're moving in the right direction, hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, let me pull up one more thing, and we'll talk about our. Hang on, I can get to the right place here. Week 6 tasks, and then we'll be done for tonight. Hang on just a second. There it is. Okay, should be able to see the week 6 tasks. You've got just a couple of chapters to read this week. Kind of gearing back a little bit on some of the reading now, single chapters a week, because you're focusing on these presentations and your reform research papers. We've got 2 presentations next week. I'll be talking about making the shift, and then Lauren will be talking about changing the culture, chapter 7. So make sure you've read those 2. Your reform research papers are presentations on those will take place in 2 weeks on October the 13th. And so hopefully everybody's moving along that. I know several of you are tying those into your system reform plans, which is perfectly acceptable. And so hopefully that'll give you a little bit of a context for your work with the system reform plans, which you've still got till the end of the semester to work on those. So those are our tasks for the weeks. Are there any questions about any of those? Everybody good to go? Any questions?
I'm good this week.
Okay, it's kind of a little bit of a light week. We've got, just looking at the calendar, we've got a couple of more weeks, the class presentations next week, and then we will have class presentations on, your reform papers on the 13th, and then you'll have the week of the 20th off. So that's kind of a look ahead for the next 3 weeks. That'll be fall break the week of the October 20th, and that'll give you a chance to be kind of gearing up toward the next part of the class. Gives you the really second half of the class to work on the reform plans. Okay. Any questions? Everybody good tonight? Okay, we'll end there. Hope you all have a good evening. Good
Thank
rest of the
you.
week.
You too.
Take care.